like a menu key to enable it. So
All
it's like
right.
hidden.
So I'm starting recording
Right.
right now. Let me double check and make sure it's recording to the right from the right channel, and it is. Excellent. So now we can just go ahead and get started. I'm uploading notes from my other classes right now, so that part is okay. All right, so I'm just getting into the new version of App Inventor today, and I got this message. So I want to stop just here, just so that we can read the message. This software is experimental, blah, blah, blah. We know that part already. Update coming Thursday. Now, of course, they didn't quite say which Thursday, which I assume is this Thursday, like tomorrow. So I'm going to take a look here. Okay, I'm just reading it as we see it, as we are reading it. On Thursday, November 14th, which is tomorrow, they should have made this. They should have used a script to generate this page, so it would update and say 1 day from now instead of a static 2 days from now. The MIT team will be making major upgrades to App Inventor 2. This is a key milestone in our plan to launch App Inventor 2 before the end of the calendar year, which is great because they will have to answer to a lot of people with a lot of questions in January in San Francisco, because there's a conference in San Francisco that I think MIT will go to. We are on track for that, but there's a lot of work yet to do. The changes on November 14th will affect you in several ways, so I'm gonna bump up the font size here so that we can all read it together. Most of the blocks will remain the same in the new system, but there are some changes. You will also see changes in the layout of the commands in the designer and blocks window. We'll outline some of these in the release notes, but release notes will not be a complete list. Please experiment. Well, I personally like this. You don't.
Please break me.
Huh?
Please break me.
Yeah. I like to experiment. I mean, it's like getting a new toy. It's like, cool. Some of the projects in AI2 will stop working, and some might not even load. We hope we'll minimize that disruption, but there will be some projects that won't work. Okay, well, that's not good. Unfortunately, pretty much all you can do is to remake the bad project. As we warned before, please make screenshots of the projects you care about to use in case you need to reconstruct them. Okay, so there you have it. I would download the source files, the AIA files. I would download all of those files, just in case. If I know how the new format works and compared to the old format, I may be able to write a script to auto-convert. It's probably possible, because I don't think the new version will have fewer features than the old version. It is just not backward compatible. Okay? Now, not backward compatible, using their engine doesn't mean that I cannot write a script to do it. So don't give up any hope on App Inventor 2. Make sure you back up all your files. Okay, I'm not saying just make sure it's a project in the cloud. Download the file, download the AIA file locally so that you have a copy. Okay, you have already done some hacking already, so you know what the inside looks like. So if in case we run into problems like this, I think we can fix it. Okay, we can fix it in-house, and even potentially make that tool open source and let other people use it as well. Okay, moving on. Before you can continue using App Inventor, after the upgrade, you will need to update your App Inventor companion. The App Inventor 2 welcome page will have a barcode and a link to that you can use to obtain a new companion. So that part I'm not too worried about. I'm pretty sure we can get that part to work. Worst case scenario is to get the APK file, use ADB, or Dropbox to upload it to the phone. No problem, we can deal with that. If you have been using App Inventor on a Mac, you will also need to update your App Inventor setup software to be able to continue using the emulator and a USB cable, blah, 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 blah. As is the case now, these features are only available for Mac OS. Windows and Linux will be coming soon. So that's okay. We already know how to deal with that in this class. You will see a new report and issue link on the designer and blocks pages. This will take you to a form that you can use to report suspected bugs or request help. And So well, all right. Well, I'm actually personally kind of excited that they are making changes, they are fixing bugs, even if it might cause backward incompatibility. I mean, this is just the way it is when it comes to software development. Has anyone developed any software using PHP? No.
I spent a long time ago, very little.
I have been doing PHP a little bit, but not a whole lot. I'm not a PHP programmer. I'm more of a Perl programmer. PHP is a lot of times backward incompatible. In other words, a minor change from, let's say, 5.6 to 5.8, which is not supposed to be a big change, will render some of the programs written for 5.6 inoperable. Okay, it just won't work. It will just give you a page and say, oh, this feature is now not supported. You'll have to do it in some other way. That's not good for large websites. And yet, people use PHP all the time. They continue to use PHP. So that basically just means that changes like this happens. Has anyone used the Visual Basic at work or with your other projects? Okay. And do you notice that Visual Basic is not always backward compatible? Like from 6 to 7 was a huge jump in Visual Basic. Basically all projects written for VB6 does not run in VB7.
You have to hope that their autoconverter will work.
Well, do you trust their autoconverter? No. If you don't trust their autoconverter, then you still have to manually go in and change all the software. So, things like this, do happen. I'm not too concerned about it. Just want to let you guys know what is coming. So once we get this out of the way, we can go ahead and continue with our projects. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to experiment with the sound recorder part. Okay, this is one thing that we haven't really tried it out in class. I talked about it, but we haven't really tried it. So today is a day that we can just do it. So the first thing is I'm not going to modify my current app to incorporate that new feature because my project is kind of big already, and I don't want to use it as a test bed for a new feature or one thing that I'm quote unquote learning to use. So what I want to do, and this is something that you can also consider when you want to try out something new, is to start a new project that has nothing except for the feature that you want to test. Okay, because that way you isolate all the problems to a single little program instead of saying, well, I got this huge, gigantic program that has all of these things, and now I add a new feature, it's not working. Is it because of my existing code that it's not working, or is it because of the new things that I'm adding that makes it not work? Well, if you make a new project that its sole purpose is to test the recorder, then you can isolate the cause of the problems and just say, well, it has to be in this particular app, which is really simple. So we'll use this program called Recorder to give it a try. Okay. And it's not responding. Oh, there we go. All right. So on this screen here, obviously, Recorder falls into the category of media. And actually it's not ready for prime time because I just want to do a sound recorder in this case. If you click the question mark and click the link here, it will bring you to the documentation. I'm not going to read the documentation, as a very typical programmer or developer. I'm not going to read the documentation until I run into something and I go, I don't know how to proceed from here, and I will go ahead and read the documentation. There are several reasons why I do this. Okay, one is sometimes the documentation can be very long, lengthy, and for the most part not applicable to what you are doing. Okay, and the other thing is, well, it is an adventure. So I'm going to drag and drop this block into here. The nice thing about a graphical user interface like this is you can go to blocks and just click sound recorder and find out what you can do with the sound recorder. In this case, the events, the first 3 items, the first 3 blocks here are important because they are the events that can trigger the execution of your code. The first one is after sound recorded. I think that kind of explains what this event is about, right? Okay, when someone is done recording the sound, then this event will happen. And this one little extra thing, sound here, is not a part of the name, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. After sound, recorded sound. That doesn't make any sense. It's not a wraparound. Sound is a parameter so that your code inside this block can know the file location of the sound. Okay, that's the intention of the sound here. When sound recorded one dot started recording, so that means when somebody click that button to start recording, this event will occur. And when someone stop recording, that's also what this will trigger. In the case the recorder has stopped and can be started again. And then this one is the most important one, provides the location of the newly created sound. Okay. Don't you think the first one after sound recorded is about the same as the last one, which is stopped recording? What is the difference? Should there be a difference? I'm guessing the first one cannot trigger until the file is actually created. The third one can occur as soon as someone clicks that button and say stop recording. There can be a time lag in between, because it is possible that the recorder is buffering the sound and converting everything to MP3 or another format. So before the conversion is all done, you won't get the first block, the first event. But the third event happens as soon as you press the key and say, I'm done recording. So that's my guess. Okay. And you can see that it has no extra, properties. There's nothing that says, set something. But you do have two extra blocks here to start the recorder and also to stop the recorder. In other words, you can make, your app covertly recording, sound without having someone to click the button. Some of you are understanding what I'm talking about here, because you're seeing the potential, all the dangerous potential of this app here, okay, with this feature, because now you can actually have an app that uses a timer, okay, and it will automatically turn on the record a file, and okay, once we have a file, what do we do with it? I mean, it doesn't do a hacker any good if the file sits on the device, right? So what other component do you need in order to get the file out of the device and basically beam it to mothership? Yep.
If you hover over it, like keep your mouse on top of it, it gives you more. Keep your mouse on top of the top.
The purple one?
Or like the orange one on top, the very top. Yes. Leave it for a second and get it more.
Have you did that?
Yeah, I did that. Yeah, I didn't do this one though. See, it starts recording and stop recording. The web component combined with its method of posting a file allows you to upload any file to any URL. Okay, so this is kind of nifty on one hand, but I think someone can write a really creepy app using this particular component if they want to. Which also means this ability is in every single app. They can turn on the recorder, they can turn on the video camera anytime the app wants to, as long as it is active. Yep.
And you give it permission when you install it.
Yes, but most people just go yes.
It's a calculator, and for some reason it needs to record video and audio.
And at the same time have access to your internet connection. Yes. And your phone book, your contact list.
This permission apps have restrict permissions, and you have also IP tables to restrict, I think, network access to a lot of apps.
Now, does it only restrict incoming, or does it also restrict outgoing?
Well, it's actually able to restrict it based on Wi-Fi and I guess the radio connection for each individual app.
Oh, okay, I see.
But you can also reverse that, so you pre-establish what it can do, and anything new is automatically blocked.
Ah, that can be helpful. All right, so let's go ahead and play with this and see what we can do with it. Okay, go back to the designer. Just having a sound recorder is not going to be very helpful because the screen is still blank. But remember, you can actually put a clock into this whole thing, and have basically recording that turns on by itself at certain times. So even though the interface doesn't have a start button to start and stop recording, you can actually do something like that, without an interface to do so. All right. So in this case, I'm just going to make it really simple. Okay, I will have one button to start and also to stop the recording. Okay, so I'm going to change the text, the caption here, to initially start recording, and then we'll also have, let's see here, I'll have a label so I can report back where is the file location. So this is going to be, the text is going to be file location. All right, so this is all that I'm going to have in this particular screen. Go back to blocks, and then we'll put some code into it, and then give it a try. Okay, so go to button 1 here, and I want to do something when the button is clicked. Now, the problem is I don't know whether the recorder is still on or is it off, because if the recorder is on already, I want to display, I want to stop the recorder. If the recorder is off to begin with, I want to turn it on. So this has to be kind of like a toggle. Okay, so I need a way to tell whether the recorder is on or off. So I go to sound recorder here. Do you think anything here is going to help me? Not by itself. Okay, by itself, nothing here is going to help me, because all this is, it doesn't allow me to test whether the sound recorder is still active recording or not. So what I need to do now is to use a global variable to record the state of the recorder. Okay. So it's time to go to variables, initialize a global variable. In this case, I'll just say it is recorder is active. Okay, that's the name of the variable. And I'm going to initialize it to initially false, because when I start the application, the recorder is by default not running, not doing anything. So that's why the state of the recorder, or the variable recorder is active, should be off, initially. Are there any questions about, why I need a global variable? The component itself doesn't track its own state, or does not report its own state, so I need something else to help me keep track of it. Now that we have a global variable like this, I can go back to sound recorder 1, and then I can say, start recording and stop recording. I'm going to do something with these two events, because when the recorder starts recording, I want to change recorder is active to true. When it has stopped, I want to change it back to false, so that way I can track, from the rest of the program, I can tell whether the recorder is actually on or off. Okay, so what I need to do here is to go to variables and just use 2 of these blocks to do it. The first one is here, and then the second one is going to be down here. And one is going to set it to false, because once I stop the recorder, I want to set the active flag to false, and the other one I want to set it to true once it starts recording, like so. So now, even though the recorder itself doesn't have any ability to track whether it's on or off, once I attach these 2 little blocks, I can now actually keep track of the state of the recorder. Okay. Any questions at this point? No questions at this point? Okay. I also need something else to help me, because when I change the state of the recorder, I also want to change the button, the label on the button. And it seems like I need to do something like that, kind of at multiple places. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a procedure to kind of summarize what I need to do. So this way I just need to invoke or call the procedure from different places, and then I can get things done. So this procedure can be called update
button label.
No, it's going to be update recorder status. That's what I'm going to do. Okay, it will take one parameter, and the one parameter that I'm taking in is new recorder state, if true means it's on and false means it's off. Okay, and I can make it more clear. I can say not just the state, but it is whether it is active or not. So this way it's more clear whether true means it's available or whether true means it is active or not. All right. So once I have this, I can now use this kind of block here and stash it into this block. Except I'm not going to turn it to false all the time because I have my parameter called new recorder active state. So what I'm going to do here is to utilize that quote-unquote variable. So we go to variable, we say get, oops, there we go. And this time I'm going to use the parameter called new recorder active state. Okay, so it's a lot more general now. Okay, it's not scattered all over the place. Okay, once I change the state of the recorder, the second thing I want to do is to change the label on my button, right? Because I want the button, the caption on the button to reflect what I can do at that point. So I can now use a conditional statement. Depending on the new state, I will use a conditional statement that has an else component because I have two branches to consider in this case, whether it is true or not. And over here I would use get to use the parameter new recorder active state to help me decide which way to go. If new recorder active state is true, I'm going to go to one place which will basically label the button and say, okay, it's on, and right now you can click the button to turn it off to finish the recording, and then the other one will do exactly the reverse. Okay. So here we'll go to button 1, change its property, change button 1 dot text to something, and that something is going to be just some text. Because I'm turning the recorder on, the button will now have to say, stop recording. And then the matching part for the else part is to start recording. So, is that making any sense so far? Okay, so I have a little toggle basically. If it's on, I can turn it off. If it is off, I can turn it back on. Any other questions at this point? No questions? All right. And then the other thing I can also do is to say, well, was it on before? Okay, is the button, actually on before? And I also need to set the global variable to reflect the state. I can cheat a little bit here because I have a button where the text is always reflecting whether the recorder is on or off. I can kind of use that as a flag. But I don't want to do it that way because the button really should not be used as a way to track the state of something else. So I'm going to keep the global variable set recorder is active, and basically copy this block all the way here. But instead of turning it to true all the time, I'm going to rely on my oh, I got that one already. I just did it before. I just forgot about it. Okay. Okay, now we have a little bit of a problem because I also want to use this particular subroutine to trigger the recorder to actually turn it on when it's off, and I want to request it to be on, and to turn it off when initially it is already on. So I want to look at the toggle, or I want to look at the previous state and then see whether the new state is different from the old state before I perform this block here. So I'm going to take this block away and stash it somewhere else. Okay, it's still useful, but this is not the right place to put it. Okay. All right. So what I need to do now is to compare the old state to the new state. This is the new state. The new state is I want to turn it on. So what I need to do now is to see whether it was off before, because if it was off, I need to turn on the recorder right now at this point. Okay. So let's go ahead and use another conditional statement right here. And the other conditional statement is basically saying if the old state is off and the new state is on, now I need to actually turn on the recorder. And to do that, we can go to logic, go to variable, because I need to look at the current state, which is the global variable. And if it is negated, if it is false, then I'll do something. So go back to logic, take the negation here, and then connect this one here. Okay, so now I can, inside this block here, let me put a pointer to where I wanted to talk about, right here. So if I ever get to this block here, that means the new state is on, the current state is off, so that means I have to turn on the recorder at this moment. Okay. And to turn on the recorder, we just go to sound recorder 1, and we say call start sound recorder start. That's how I'm going to start the recorder. I will have a matching code on the other side. So copy, paste, stash it over here. Except for this one, I'm going to turn it off. So go to sound recorder and say sound recorder 1, turn it off. And I also do not need the negation here, because if I get to this point, that means the new state is off, but the old state is on. So I need to actively turn it off in this case. All right. Are there any questions about the code at this point? Oh, I just got one little thing that I have to deal with here. And then I have to change the state of the recorder to whatever it is supposed to be, the new state. So I'm going to use get variable and specify the parameter called new recorder active state. Are we still doing okay so far, with this code? Kind of? Okay. Now where do we put this? In other words, where do we call this procedure? The first thing is when the screen is initialized. Because when the screen is initialized, I need the buttons, the one single button, to have the proper label on it. So now I will go to screen 1, and when it is initialized, I will invoke or call the procedure that I just wrote. So I'm going to call update recorder status, and I will turn it off. So in other words, I'm going to go to logic here and say I want to turn off the recorder at this point because it was off to begin with. But I need the label of the button to reflect, it is now off. The initialization of the recorder is active global variable is going to do it right, just here. So I have just about everything that I need to get it to work. Okay. With that in mind, I don't really need this event anymore. Okay. So I'm gonna, instead of taking the entire event away, I'm just gonna take out what it is supposed to do because it is no longer needed. The key now is what do I do with button 1? Because button 1 has to call update recorder status. That's for sure. The question is it going to call that with true as a parameter or with false as a parameter? In other words, I know that the button click has to do something like this. Okay, we have to call the procedure that we just wrote, like this one here. The question is, what am I going to specify as new recorder active state? That is the question. What do you think? It is always opposite to the current state. If it's already on, I want to turn it off. If it's already off, I want to turn it on. Is that making any sense? Okay, I'm going to write the code here, and then you guys can tell me whether it makes sense or not, or whether I have lost it completely.
You have to say it's false, false?
No, it's going to be like this. It's going to be just not, and then we use the variable recorder is active. It's going to be just that. It looks too simple to be true, doesn't it? But would it work? Okay, now let's look at the global variable and see what it is supposed to do. The global variable recorder is active it's supposed to reflect whether the recorder is currently active or not, right? But the button is always supposed to do the opposite. If the recorder is active, it's actually recording at this point, the job of the button when you click it is to stop the recording. So it works because if recorder is active, I want new recorder active state to be false. On the other hand, if the record is off at this point, nothing is being recorded at this point, I want to turn it on. So not false is true, and that means I'm going to turn the recorder on. I think it's going to work just fine. Okay, so we'll go ahead and give it a try. Okay, and using the emulator, which is also one of the things I haven't tried before, is to see whether the emulator actually has a microphone that connects to the microphone that I have here. Let me double check first, whether I even can see a control here. I can see the browser. Okay, I got QEMU, so it is true. Okay, so I can see right here. If you, well, maybe you cannot, but I use this program quite a bit, so I know what it's doing. The first one is QEMU. Okay, I have the emulator working, and it's QEMU. That's the name of the program. That's the name of the emulator of the Android device. And you can see it is capturing from the Go mic, which is the same microphone that I use for cross recording. So the emulator is actually getting the sound. Okay, that's what it's getting. It's getting the sound. And if I look at playback, I'm hoping that it also has a playback to a device. It's hooked up to the built-in audio stereo, which is good. I mean, that's basically it's just recorded, play to the recorder in the system. All right, so I think we are all set up to go. I'm just double checking my recorder is still on here. Package for phone, download this to this computer. Very typical, usual stuff that we do. So I'm guessing no one's going to use new blocks app inventor tomorrow. You guys are going to like, okay, we'll wait until tag has done something and tested the system. Okay, recorder.apk, save the file. And then we go back to the command prompt because I have one that is already set up. We are ready to run adb here. Adb install -r, I think. Yeah, reinstall is -r. And then the file is temp recorder. It's all installed. Go to the emulator. And, oh, I just clicked the button that I'm not supposed to. We have recorder. Start the recorder. And the initialization is good. Okay, start recording. And then we can start the recorder. It doesn't show you anything, right? Because the recorder has no on-screen component until you give it one. So right now, I'm just doing some recording, and then we can click stop recording, and nothing happens. But that's exactly the way it's supposed to be, because I have not given it a button to replay the file that was saved earlier. Okay, so it doesn't have that ability just yet, which is perfectly okay. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is to reflect the file location, because when the recorder stops and it finishes encoding the file, it will create another event that will give you the location of the file. I'm going to use my label to reflect the location of the file, and then in another revision I will have another button just to play back that file. Okay, so I'm adding steps onto this program step by step. I'm not going to do everything in one single shot. Okay, so going back to this program, this is kind of working the way I'm expecting it. So now it's time to add something to it. Go back to sound recorder one, and then we say after sound recorded, we're going to do something. The first thing we'll do is to save the name of the file, which is in parameter sound, into my the text portion of my label. So we go to label 1, set the text of label 1 to sound. Okay, so we'll say, can I just type sound here? Nope. There we go. And this is my second revision. I'm not even going to bother to, place a button to play the file until I know the file is there and this event is getting triggered. So now we go through the cycle again, download the program again, upload it, and then test it again. App Inventor 2 is what I would call not cutting edge, development tool. I would call that bleeding edge. I used to work in a company in Davis, and they make embedded system controllers using pretty old, components, and I call that the bruising edge of technology. It's kind of blunt. Alright, so we got file, reinstall the recorded application. We go back to the app and give it a try. So we say start recorder, blah 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 blah, stop recording, and here we have the location of the file. Storage / SD card / my documents / recording / da 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 da. And that huge number that you see, 1384364200699. Okay, that's the other part is just the extension. 3GP is the extension. Can anyone kind of guess what this number is? Does anyone recognize this number?
The date and time.
In
Milliseconds.
Since
1970 or 60?
1970, because it's Unix based. With Windows, it would be since 1980. Yep.
Is that what they call it? Like epoch date or something like that?
Yeah, epoch. Yeah, sometimes it's called the epoch time. Other times it's just called the Unix timestamp. There are just multiple ways to refer to it, but that's basically what it is. That's why to us, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, but it really is the best way to represent time because it's easy to compare. You don't have to factor in, years and months and day of month and so on. Yep.
So it's just counting back from a set date. Is that what it's doing?
Well, let's count the number of zeros, then I can answer your question. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So this has to be counting in milliseconds. So this is the number of milliseconds since 1970, January 1st, midnight, to the moment the file was created.
Okay.
So it's the duration in between.
So basically my overall question is, if you were in the off chance that you were recording a file at during a time change, because you have to set your clock back an hour, so you repeat 1 a.m. again?
No,
so
it would not, because
so
it is
not affected, 'cause it's just
it's not affected because it's always relative to UTC or GMT back in the
okay.
day.
So it's
Yeah.
not affected by it.
Right, because it has an absolute time reference.
Okay.
So in other words, the answer that I gave you a little bit earlier was not the entire answer, it's a part of it. So it's 1970, January 1st, midnight, UTC.
Okay.
So now, time zone does not matter because time zone is one of the last things that your system, does to convert it to the time that you understand, in the current time zone that you set it to. Yep. So that's why I like, the way Unix represents time, and when it has a chance, it will set up your real-time clock, on your computer, also to the current time, but not to the current time zone, but to UTC time zone. So you have to configure your computer and say, okay, I don't want you to display the time using the UTC time zone, which is the default one. I want you to use Pacific time. Okay. Do you have daylight saving time? So you configure all of that stuff. Then it can do the conversion from UTC, which is how it tracks time internally, to the time that you actually see in the clock or file information.
That makes sense.
It makes more sense than the way that Windows does it, because Windows keeps track of the time of the current time zone. So when you take your computer to a different place, then your computer will be off, right? Because it doesn't track the absolute time; it's only tracking the time of the current time zone. All right. So this is rather encouraging. Okay, I can get the location of the file. So now I can go back to the app one more time and add another button to play the file. So I'm gonna have another button here. and we'll just change the text to playback. Okay. And then go back to blocks and do something about it. Okay, now the easiest way for me to change this program to use playback is simply to add the playback button here. Okay, so we just use button 2 and say when it is clicked, I'm going to use that file and play the file. To play a file, I need to go back to Designer and do something about it, because I have to go to Media and drag and drop a player. Okay, because when you look at player, multimedia component that plays audio or video control and control phone vibration. The name of a multimedia field is specified or I can specify sound, a multimedia component that plays sound files and optionally vibrate, blah blah blah. So we'll go ahead and just pick one or the other. Doesn't matter which one. They both get the job done. Sound has a minimum interval and also a source. So what we need to do is to set the source first and then do the play. So then we go back to blocks and go to sound 1. And then what we'll do is we'll set sound 1 dot source to the file name. I don't have a global variable to store the file name, but I can rely on something else. What can I rely on? My label. Okay. The text of the label is supposed to be the source of the file, okay, or the path to the file. So I set the source, and then I can go back to sound 1 and say, call sound 1 dot play. If I just want the absolute minimal code to test this program, this is what I would do. Now, but this is not something that is complete, because when the sound is still being recorded, I probably don't want to have the option to play it just yet. In other words, I can add some additional code to this procedure here to basically say, okay, if the sound recorder is still on, it is actively recording something, hide not only the button to let you play back, but also the label that reflects the location of the file, because it is still being recorded right now. It doesn't make any sense. It does make sense from the perspective of the old file is still there. You can actually access it, but it doesn't make sense from the perspective of saying, oh, okay, I'm going to play the recording, but which recording are you playing? Okay, so but for testing purposes, since I know how the program is supposed to operate, this is okay for now. So I'm going to go to download to this computer, package it again, upload it, and then test it again. And it's getting there. Cool. It works a little faster today than previous days.
People are probably scared. They won't be on it.
They're all bailing. They're all lowering the lifeboats. Alright, uploaded. And then we go back to the emulator, start the recorder. Okay. And it's recording the same thing that I'm recording, with this microphone. So we'll just give it a couple of seconds and then click stop recording. You can see there's a file location here. You can see this number is slightly larger than the previous one. And then we'll do playback. Unable to play. It says unable to play, and then it played something.
Maybe it was still working before you.
Stop recording, and nothing happens. But that's exactly the way it's supposed to be, because I have not given you a button to replay the file that was played earlier. Okay, so it doesn't have that ability just yet, which is perfectly okay. All right, ready to start recorder, blah 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 blah.
All right, well,
Played another file.
I should have made a gesture, of what I would have said in Cantonese. That would be like a perfect, like a martial art kung fu movie thing. I have to make it off a little bit too, so it will still be playing, and I will stop my lip, and then before it even starts, I'll go like, and it will start doing something. Yeah.
I think the microphone driver or the drivers in general is still
It just does it automatically.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it just does, it picks up what the system is using as its mic input, and it picks it up automatically.
Is that the same for camera too?
That I haven't tried.
Or webcam?
I do have a webcam, but I don't have a spare USB cable to hook up to it. But I do have an extra webcam. Yep.
So did it just play the first recording that you didn't play back, and not the one that we just did now?
I think it did.
Because you said there was no way to play it back at that time. But that's okay.
True. That's
So
interesting.
instead of playing the one that we just recorded, it just found the next available item.
But I am using the label, to reflect, where.
But it did have an error.
So that means it's off by one. It's off, and it's fine. I mean, it's replaying.
It's playing a file, but not
Yeah.
the one that you want.
Well, it's using this file name for sure. So the question is, which file name is which file name, and it's also
Stop recording, and nothing happens. But that's exactly the
that's interesting. It is, the previous one is the one before that. You know what? I think I know what's going on here. I think there's some buffering going on. So from the microphone to the Android device, there's a little bit of buffering. So when I click the start button, it's actually not quite there yet. So there's a lag, but I don't know how much of a lag we are talking
That
about.
would be a long lag because you added code, waited for it to compile, and it was just within that time frame.
But that's the only thing that's the only logical explanation. Okay, let's do that again, and this time,
just click playback.
well, it won't because the file location is
I'm
completely
just
off.
trying to test something.
And it always complains, it cannot play it just yet. So I think the encoding is not done yet.
Press play once more.
stop recording, and here we have
See, it's offset basically. There's a huge lag between what is the current real time and what the emulator thinks is the current time, because the duration is right. Okay, it's a very short duration, plus some noise at the beginning.
The duration is right, but it seems to be rehashing that one chunk of audio.
But it's not the same chunk. I don't think it's the same chunk. Okay, that's about 4 seconds. And it always complains the first time, unable to play, because I think it's still encoding. It always starts with that noise.
and it's recording the same thing that I'm recording, with this microphone. So we'll just give it a.
It's just a lag. It really is a really, really bad lag between the current time and what the stream has not reached the emulator just yet. But on an actual device, I don't think this would be an issue. It would just work just fine. All right. So are there any questions about this? Now, if you look at the file location, it also shows you, where you can delete all those files. It's in storage, SD card, My Documents, and recordings. So let me go back to my command prompt here and see if I can get to that place. Okay. For those of you who do not know how to use the command line, it's actually pretty easy. So what you do is you say ADB, and if I remember, it's just CMD or command. I cannot remember exactly how to do it. That's why it has help.
What? You want the shell?
Sure. Yeah. Oh,
Just
ADB
type
shell.
ADB shell.
Okay, ADB shell. And now we have the very typical shell prompt, and we can now change to the folder where the file is supposed to be located. So we'll go to storage, SD card, My Documents, recordings, and do an ls for listing the files, or ls-l to display the length and also the date of the file. So we have the file sizes, which are actually pretty small. I mean, these are tiny little files, and I think the duration is reflected because the last one is a little bit longer than the second last one, and then the one before that is kind of long. So I think those are the correct file sizes. It's just having a really bad lag from the current time. All right. So that also means that if you want to remove the files, you just have to say rm, do an asterisk here, and it will remove all the recordings.
Just be very careful with that.
Yeah, well, this one is bad, but if you do something like that, it's even worse. So don't do the other one. This one will only remove all the files in the folder currently, but the other one will recursively remove all the subfolders without asking you, because that's what the lower F is saying, force, do not ask. It's okay to delete. All right. So knowing how to use Linux is definitely helpful because underneath Android is Linux. So if you already know Linux command line commands, when you use the shell option of ADB, you'll be right at home. You can do a lot of things that you normally would not be able to do without special apps on an Android device. Yep.
So that would recursively alt?
No, this will not, but this will.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm not sure whether the man pages are installed. I really doubt that. Yeah, the man pages are not installed. But when you have a real, Linux environment, you can always do that over here and say man rm, and that will show you the quote-unquote man page, which stands for manual, and it will show you how to use a particular command like rm, ls, all the typical commands.
But with the Android OS, it's probably going to be really trimmed down.
It's really trimmed down because they don't want to waste the onboard or on-chip flash, on man pages. But most people who use Android or develop applications for Android probably have access to a Linux box of some kind or just the internet, so they can actually do it too.
No, I mean the parameters as well.
The what? Sorry?
The type of the commands may not be there. The options may not be there.
Not all, but most should be there. Okay, so if you look at well, you can usually just look at, okay, there are two ways to find out what is available. You can just type set and then look at path. Okay, so this shows you the where the Android system is looking for commands, basically native low-level commands. So right here it shows we have system sbin, system bin, and so on. And you can, if you just do one ls to one of them, let's say system/sbin. Oops. Okay. It's not.
It's just sbin.
Okay. So we have adbd, which is the daemon for adb, user event daemon, and watchdog daemon. And then we can also look at vendor bin. Oh, that's just a path. No such file or directory.
I think it's the command prompt though.
ADB shell. Yep. So ADB is really useful because it's a gateway to do all sorts of stuff.
I didn't know that you could do that.
Yep. It's really helpful.
I want to check out the xbin.
Oh, let's take a look. Which one again?
System xbin.
System xbin. Yep. So that one has a lot of commands, and these are the typical commands that you can find in Linux, or at least some of these. CPU stats can be quite useful, but there are other ways to look at CPU information. So this way, I can actually tell that it's emulating a Pentium 2 class processor at this point, and it is a single core because I don't see the other processor. There's only one. You can also look at load average. So right now the load average in the emulator is pretty low. It's not doing anything. So most of the stuff that you know how to do in Linux would still apply inside the emulator, once you use the shell option of ADB. Okay, are there any questions at this point of how to use the sound recorder? No questions? Okay, let me see if it has a file command. Nope, it doesn't have a file command. Alright.
Yeah, if you want those options, you're going to have to install the BusyBox.
You can download it as a APK.
I think you
can install it.
Yeah, you can get like an installer, but you likely need to be rooted. Most definitely need to be rooted.
Yeah, that's okay. Right. Open box, but not BusyBox. I'll look it up and find out. All of my devices are rooted, so it's not an issue. All right. So, are there any questions about the sound recording part of this program? Okay. So I can now incorporate this ability into another application that I want to use, because now I'm pretty sure I know how it works. The only part that is still kind of iffy to me is how come the first time I play the file, it doesn't play it. Okay, that part still bugs me a little bit. Let me just test it one more time, and this time we'll do a 2 or 3 second recording. Stop it, and then what I'll do is I'm gonna wait. This time really wait for a long time. So that any type of encoding has to be done by this time, and I can also use ADB to take a look at the file, and we can definitely see the file is now created with content inside. So we'll go ahead and click the playback, and I'll bet you it will still complain because it is not, because the encoding is not finished. Yep. So it's always complaining the first time, and it says enable, and then if I play again, then it's okay.
Couple seconds, and then click stop recording. You can see that
it's just a really bad lag. Okay. And I have no idea why the playback doesn't work the first time, because when I click the button, it set the source to the file, and I know it set the source to the right file because otherwise it would not be able to play. But then the play doesn't work the first time, it plays the second time. I'm missing something here. Let's see what else I can set. Well, it's just the minimum interval and the source, so I don't think that has any effect to it. Well, I think I know how to debug this one. We'll go to Designer, make a third button. So I will separate the button that captures the file location and put it into the player, and then the playback is now triggered by a third button. I think that may be it. So we look at the third button and change this part here to over here. So the second button will just copy the file to the player, but it won't actually do any playing. The third button actually do the playing. Go back to the designer, change the text to reflect what it does. So this button actually does the play, whereas this button only captures the file. Okay, set file name, and then we'll try it one more time. And meanwhile, read the documentation. As I said, if it doesn't work, then we read the documentation. Yeah, that's the media recorder. Here's something that I want to ask you guys. I know the answer already. I have one ADB session that is running the shell right now. So the question is, can I run ADB again, but this time you'll use it to upload the program? What do you think? If it were a Windows tool, probably not, but since it's a Unix-based tool, it will work. Okay, so we can say adb install -r temp recorder.apk, not a problem. Okay, and going back to the application, start recording, give it a few seconds, stop it. Okay, so now we have the file, already placed here. Set file name, which only sets the file name in the player, and then we click play, and it works the first time.
It's really glitching it out.
Yeah, and then it plays just okay. It's really weird. I think aliens have hacked my phone or my computer in an attempt to communicate with Earthlings.
I didn't know you made an album.
Huh? On YouTube, put it on YouTube. I'll be famous. Everybody wants to get that fame now.
Whack-a-mole.
Yeah. It's still installed. Yes. All right. Okay, so the next thing is, what if we have a problem with the sound player in App Inventor, and I want to get the file to somewhere else and then play it somewhere else. Okay, well, ADB can be useful for that purpose too. So I'm going to run ADB here, and I will pipe it to less, which means I can. Oh, that doesn't work because it's not going to standard out, but that's okay. We can still see it. We can actually download files from a device, using ADB directly. And I just find out how to do that.
Cool.
Yep. Copy file directory from device is ADB pull, and I need to find the remote location and an optional location that is local. All right, so we'll go ahead and do that. And the file location is. Of course, I cannot remember, but that's perfectly okay because I got it here. So we just copy and paste the text here. Okay, so we'll just copy this portion, go back to here, use a double quote first. Well, I can just paste it, but I have to paste. After I paste, I have to do something about it because there's a space here. You cannot have a space in the file name without escaping it. So the backslash is what we call an escape character. It allows you to specify funny and strange characters as a part of a file name. Because once you have a backslash, it simply says, okay, the backslash is not a part of the name that we want, but it is the next thing, whatever it is what we want. Okay, so the next thing can be a slash itself, can be another backslash, which means I want backslash itself as a part of the file name, or in this case it can be a space because it means oh, okay, whatever is following is a part of the path name or the directory name. So in this case the space character is a part of the path name here. And I'll specify temp, so I would just download everything to my temp folder. So now I have all of the recordings downloaded to the temp folder. And we'll use another shell to look at the temp folder. And in a full Linux environment, I have a file name, I have a command called file that can examine and tell me what a file is. So in this case, I'm going to ask it, what exactly is that? And you can see that, file tells me it is an MPEG-4 encoding. It's using the 3GPP method for encoding. And we can now go take a look at the file and try to play back on the host side and see whether we can make some sense out of it. So we go to the temp folder and open it with Pro Media Player. It's not opening. Error occurred, requires an adaptive multi-rate decoder plugin, which is not installed. Okay, I can't do it here. Let's see if Audacity can handle it. Does not recognize the type. Okay, I guess not. Nope. Okay, so I don't have any decoder, on the local side, on the host side to play that file. Right. Any questions about your app? Okay. What this means is, set file name has to be done somewhere else. I mean, it cannot be done when I click the button, unfortunately. Okay. Any questions? I mean.
Question.
Yep.
How do you make a screenshot of your project?
How do you make a screenshot of your project? It depends on your operating system. In Windows, I believe it's just the print screen key on your keyboard.
And so if you have a great big box editor, you have to do sections at a time.
Right.
You don't all show up the screen at one time.
Correct.
And
Yep.
you also take a screenshot of the designer,
Say again?
the designer.
Yeah, you want.
Components list and,
Yep.
and the viewer.
Mhm.
Take a screenshot of that.
Yep.
And a screenshot of what shows up on the emulator.
I don't think the emulator is going to be very helpful, but
No, it's a sample.
yeah, you can take a screenshot of the emulator as well.
Is your project App Inventor 1 or 2?
Doesn't matter. It's a question about how to preserve your App Inventor 1 before you move to App Inventor 2. This was at the beginning discussion here.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that?
Yep.
Yeah.
But
You
it
also
wasn't
mentioned
only
the
related to
AIA file. What's that?
That's a file format when you download it from App Inventor 2. So when you click a file, when you click a project to download, click one. When you click download source, it will download as an AIA file.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's only for App Inventor 2.
Correct.
If you have App Inventor 1, I don't think there's a forced update.
It's just a zip file, and it's it's the
I think
same old thing.
is misinterpreting what we said. You said earlier about App Inventor 2.
Ah. Yeah, if you go to App Inventor 1, which is just your App Inventor, this is still version 1.
Alright, listen up everyone,
This is the interface that you get. You don't have any projects yet, so there's no warning like what we saw earlier. So App Inventor 1 is actually slowly getting deprecated. It's basically saying, okay, we're not doing anything to it, we're not changing it, we're not fixing it, it's just the way it is, but they're putting all the effort to App Inventor 2 now, which makes sense. Okay. Any questions, about your app? Okay, things that you are trying to do with your app. Yep.
Can I ask about Linux?
Go
Does
ahead.
Linux have the Linux you're using right now? Does that have a version number the way Windows has a version number?
It does, but it doesn't work the same way as Windows. Because in Linux, what happens is, it reflects the version, but this is the kernel version, which is not the same thing as the GUI version. So right now I'm running kernel 3.11. That's the version of the kernel that I'm running. Inside Android, I believe it has something similar. So let's take a look at the same thing here. And it's running 3.4, which is a little bit older than 3.11, 3.11, but it's still a pretty recent version of the Linux kernel. Unlike Windows, with Linux, if you're not doing anything that is very low level, down to the core of the kernel, the version doesn't do much. There's not much change between versions. I can be running version 2.22 of Linux, and most of the commands will still work exactly the same way as it is here. The GUI, on the other hand, is not tied to the operating system. I'm using XFCE4, and XFCE4 is not a part of the Linux operating system. So now you can have a really old kernel with a really new interface, or vice versa. You have, you can mix and match, things a lot more than in Windows, which is a good thing for some people and it's a bad thing for some other people. But the best part about it is, if I'm a professor, teaching an operating system, I would go for Linux. I'm not going to teach Windows. Yep.
Don't forget to add the additional layer that you're using Debian instead and not, so it's just the flavor of Linux you're using, the kernel, and then whatever GUI you're not using.
Right. There is a lot of a degree of freedom. Yep. And to some people, freedom means insecurity and is a bad thing. To some other people, it's a good thing because now you can choose.
Sometimes you need to be on the same page, because Linux is like it's my computer. It's not. Maybe you can build the same thing.
The other thing about Linux is, if I want the whole class like 363 to unify and use the same interface, the same tools, I can give you just the ISO image that I have already created. Whatever I use for this class, is on a USB, stick. So for those of you who don't want to, install stuff, like Eclipse and stuff like that, I can just give you the image with everything already pre-installed. You just pop either the DVD or the USB drive, onto your computer. Restart your computer, assuming it doesn't use a UEFI, secure boot. Then you can just use the distribution that I have prepared for you with all the tools that I use in class, with all the same commands, the same graphical user interface, and everything will be consistent. So that's an option for those of you who want to kind of go that route. For those of you who want to install Eclipse on Windows, you can do that too. So we have a lot of options in cisp362, but we lose the ability or the native ability to store apps in the cloud. So that means it is your responsibility to save your file and back it up and make sure you don't lose anything, which is a good thing because now you cannot have MIT screwing up the projects and you cannot work on it anymore. But at the same time, you have to back it up to make sure that you don't lose anything. Okay. Any question about your own projects? Because I know you guys are starting on your own projects. Yep.
Actually, one last question about Linux. When they teach it at college, do they just teach the kernel?
When they teach it over here?
No, at the Sac City College.
It's the same. I mean, 323 is 323, or at least supposedly it is the same. Right. So we can look it up. It's the same course description, regardless of the campus. If you want to look it up at Sac City, we can do that too. This is also kind of recommended for those of you who do not know Linux. It's really helpful to know Linux in order to make use of Android, because Android is Linux down below. And we look at class schedule. Fall 2013, Sac City main campus, and CISC 323 is the name. Okay, this course introduces the Linux operating system for microcomputers. Concepts include the kernel, which is the really low-level core part of an operating system. File structures, which basically means okay, here's one root folder and then subfolders and so on. Daemons are basically services, programs that are running in the background to help out your program. ADB, starts out a daemon in the background so that it can communicate with the Android device. Graphical user interface is what you're seeing right now. I'm using XFCE4. Depending on the professor, they may use a different one, like GNOME 3, Unity, KDE, Fluxbox. There's a whole bunch of graphical user interfaces. Open source is not unique to Linux. It is just a concept of how programs are developed and also distributed. File security and permissions. In other words, if you are on a multi-user system, how do you make sure that your files are secure and not visible to other people? Procedures for installing software, basic system administration and utilities, the Born Again shell, bash, command line interface utility, and introduction to scripting topics are also covered. So that tells you what the class is about. Yep.
If anyone wants to take it, they should take it here because Strange teaches it. He's the only one that teaches it in person in philosophy of statistics.
Wait. Oh yeah, this is online.
Yeah, so I definitely recommend taking it here if you.
And Michael knows what he's talking about too. Yeah, he uses Linux. May not be as much as I do because I don't use Windows. So that tells you how often I use Linux. Yeah.
But all the online quizzes and tests he put,
Yeah.
he automates it, so a lot of them are just invalid to begin with.
You mean the answers or the?
Yeah. So you're trying to answer it. Oh, it's like a list of things, or please select the next one, and it gives a text box.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is like it's all encoded like.
It's all going to change, okay? It is all going to change because Michael actually asked me to install some additional question types in Moodle. So I know he's working on something. So next time, if you guys are taking cisp363 from Michael, I think he's creating new types of questions in his quizzes. I don't know for sure, but I think that's his plan. But it's a good class to take anyway. I mean, I really think that knowing how to operate in Linux is only going to be helpful. I don't think it's going to be a waste of time. Does anyone have any plan to use to do any type of web scripting? Writing scripts on servers and doing server administration, that sort of thing. Knowing Linux can be very helpful because many organizations use Linux as an operating system, not on the desktop because it's kind of a little bit more difficult to use, but on the back end, on servers, Linux is used a lot for several reasons. One, it's free, and two, it is very standardized. I mean, there's not a whole lot of differences between versions. Yep, go ahead.
Do you have access to the power server to be able to have access to run scripts?
You guys all have access to the power server.
Oh.
Let me just double check because sometimes I
logged in before, but I wasn't sure if you had permissions to be able to run
Yes, you do. Yep, you definitely do. Yeah, you can definitely do that. I set up you guys on the power server so that you actually have a database allocated. So every single one of you in this class has a. Okay, let me just double check, make sure. Okay, so we'll go to. Okay, I'm gonna check it. Yep, so this class is on Power. You have accounts that are exposed to the internet, and everyone in this class has a database allocated. The login name is your last name plus first initial. If another student has the same last name and the first initial, you just have to add like 2, 3, 4, to as a suffix to your name, and then try to log in. Your initial password is going to be your student ID number. I suggest that you change that as soon as you log in. And then after you log in, okay, let me just go ahead and take a look at what some of you here. I can see who's in this class just by going to the Power server and then look for cisp362. So these are you guys in this class. I'm gonna pick one person here, and okay, so this is how I just need to look up the path here so I can show you what you can do when you're on Power. Okay, so when you're on Power, I'm just going to sign in pretending I'm this particular student, okay, who is not here today. Okay, so I'm pretending to be this student. When you log in using WinCP, you're signing in using PuTTY, P-U-T-T-Y PuTTY. The first thing you will see is this command prompt. If you do an ls, you can see all of these files. Don't put anything here in the root folder, and that's why I have these stupid file names over here. 000, which means this will get displayed before all the other files. Do not delete files, and then do not put web files here because it's not going to be visible to the internet. Everything that is exposed to the internet is under the subfolder public HTML, and then you do another ls here, and you see the same two files over here. Do not delete any files in this folder. Do not add any new files over here because that's not where things are supposed to be. So you go to cisp362, and finally, this is where you can put your files. You can run PHP scripts, you can run Perl scripts on this server. You already have a MySQL account. The MySQL account, is going to be the same login name, same as the login name to the shell, and the same password. Okay, so that way you can create your own database and do whatever you want with the database. But it's already set up. Okay, everything is set up here to be to run PHP and Perl scripts with all the modules installed, so we can use MySQL inside PHP or Perl. Any questions about using Power? Because some of you want to use the web component, and this is one way to test your stuff. No questions? Yep.
What is the college Wi-Fi? Is that the
LRCCD.
Hotspot.com, is that it?
HRCCD.
LRCC.
LRCCD, sorry.
Yeah,
But
the
you need to get
hotspot
one of those
doesn't work
before you
anymore.
do that.
Hotspot doesn't work, huh?
But you need to access Hotspot if you don't already have the necessary stuff.
Yeah, you gotta.
set up.
It's a crap load of configurations.
You have to get
I
a
thought you just have
certificate and all
to-
that stuff.
Oh, you have to get a certificate?
Yeah. And you have to set up a profile on your computer.
It's dumb.
Oh, okay, on a regular computer, yes.
Yes.
But with Android, I do not remember having
Yeah,
to do
you need
anything.
to download a certificate.
Yep. Maybe you were
No, I
exempt
don't.
from
And
your
you're-
professor.
No, it's the same because it's using the same LDAP. It's using the same mechanism to sign everyone in. But I think I have never installed any certificate for Wi-Fi access. But I think I can still. Yeah, I'm still connected to LRCCD and be able to do everything online. So
Yeah, mine is security 802.1x EAP method.
yeah, same here. But I never have a.
And I have a certificate authority that was required.
Hmm.
Yeah, mine connects with no problems. I don't think I need a certificate.
Yeah, mine did not
I
connect.
may have changed the upward, but when I
Yeah.
originally tried to connect, it hadn't set this all up.
I had the same issues you did.
Okay.
Is that 4 characters? LRTD?
LRCCD is the name.
TCD.
LRCCD, which is Los Rios Community College District.
And does it require a password?
It will ask you to sign in. Okay, let me see if I can get to that page.
It'll ask you for your student ID and your password.
Yeah, same
Okay,
student
same
ID and
login.
same password as and logging into anything else. Okay, let me double check. LRCCD Wi-Fi, and that should be good enough. It's the same across all the colleges, so it's the same. So, wireless network card, register student at any of the colleges, faculty or staff member, your LRCCD, domain name and password. So here you have the steps to do it. Connecting to the network, open your network and sharing center. In Windows, if you have a Mac, open the network preferences to view. You'll be prompted to enter username and password. So, okay, you will be asked to accept the certificate on your device. So that's I guess it's a step that is.
That's for Windows, but for Android, you have to download it through one of the hotspots first,
Okay.
because it's a
Prerequisite.
Yeah, to accessing the LRCCD.
Okay. Because I don't remember I had to do something like that. Maybe I just clicked yes
I
without.
don't think I had to either.
Yeah. It could be just automatic. Maybe it's set up to accept the certificate by default or something. Okay, but there you have it.
And that's available on campus until the end of the semester, is that right?
I think as long as you remain as a registered student, even if you are not enrolled in classes, I think it's still active. I'm not 100% sure.
I think it's as long as your username and password are good.
Okay. So that means you do not have to enroll in classes, because I know that some people are not enrolled in classes and their username is still active. Cool.
Did that include the summer? Did that include the 2 months of summer when you're not taking
I do not
classes?
know for sure, because I'm not administering the Wi-Fi network. The best people to ask would be the district IT people, the district office information technology people. So those people will be able to answer your question. All right. Any questions specific to the apps that you guys are writing before I end today's lecture? No questions? You guys are all going fine with your project? It's all going at a steady pace? All right. And nobody's encountering any problems, issues? Great. All right. Well, so I'm going to end today's lecture. I'm hoping that some of you will incorporate, some kind of media stuff into your app. It's not required. It's just that we have the ability to do it, so it'd be kind of fun to do it. Yep.
We're limited to one app. Like, if we get done with our initial one, can we just make another one and spin it as well? Or?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want to do another app and turn it in, you can certainly do it. If the two apps are related, like one is like the first stage and then the other one is like a second stage, or
Like
it
a version
refines
2?
it, like a version 2, that's fine too. But you can also write a second app to extend the capability of the first one.
Okay.
So they're not exactly the same app, but you can use Activity Starter to start the second app from the first one. So now you can modularize your apps so that one doesn't try to do too much. So you have one that is already done, and then you can use Activity Starter to start your second app, as long as they're kind of related.
I was just thinking about doing something completely different.
That would be fine. I mean, that's fine. That's fine with me.
What's the benefit of doing that, of modularizing it?
So you don't put all your eggs in the same basket. In case something happens to App Inventor, and your project gets to the complexity where it cannot handle it, then you don't have to push one app too far. You can just kind of distribute the complexity to different parts. One thing that I personally ran into, if I just kind of display my project here, the DBT diary card is not even a really complicated app, but when I go to the second screen, which is the main screen, let me just show you what the issues that I'm encountering. If I go to blocks, it's already getting to the point where you can see the scroll bar, right? I mean, you can see how tiny the scroll bar is, or the thumbnail of the scroll bar is. It became difficult for me to find stuff, and partial is because I'm combining screens into one and using the hiding ability to hide the other parts when it's not needed, and that's what I'm running into, because now you're combining a lot of logic onto one single screen, and the blocks editor, at least at the way it is right now, cannot easily handle it. Yep.
Same problem.
Yep. But remember what we saw this morning, right? I mean, the morning that App Inventor 2 is getting a major revamp. I'm thinking they have to zoom back, in this new version. Yep.
I've been using the collapse feature. It just collapses all of them, so they're just like little tabs that you can just sort and just expand them when you need to look into one.
Okay, you're talking about this collapse blocks.
So it collapses all of them, and
it's all gone. What happened? Yep. So it's a little bit easier to organize your stuff, and then when you get one, you can just right-click and expand that block again.
I just collapse all of them, sort by type, and easy to find
Sort
stuff.
by category.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's not a bad idea. That's actually a pretty good idea, because now you can find the name quicker, and then you can just with the one that you want to access, then you can just expand it, but then you have to kind of collapse it again because otherwise it will overlap, and cover up the other blocks.
Minor inconvenience, but a lot faster to find stuff.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely a good approach. Okay, that's pretty good. It doesn't give me that sort blocks by category.
Oh, once it's already sorted, it doesn't show it until it's out of it. You have like an orange and the purple.
Okay. That is funny. All right. Well, it's not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. But it's still a lot of blocks. I mean, you can see there's still a lot of blocks here, and so the point is, separate things into multiple screens if you can, so that way you don't put too much stuff into the same screen. And sometimes you can probably run up to limitations of App Inventor itself, which is also bad. Any other questions?
Question.
Yep.
Can one get things back from the wastebasket?
No. Not that I know of. None that I know of.
Once it's deleted and it says saved, it's gone.
Yep. So one thing you can do, is to use checkpoint. So just periodically, use checkpoint to check, quote unquote, check in an existing version of your program. So that way, if you need to revert it into a previous version, it's easier. Okay. No other questions? All right. So I'm going to end the lecture now, and I'll be able to help you guys individually at this point. So let me stop the recorder.